In today's gospel, Jesus speaks about something that is very difficult for us human beings, something that's really hard for us, one of the hardest things perhaps that we have to do in our life, and that is to forgive. Jesus talks about this because he's responding to a question asked by Peter. Lord, if my brother sins against me, how often must I forgive him? 7 times? Jesus listens to Peter very patiently and reflects on that for a moment. This past Friday, we remembered with sadness the events of 19 years ago, when on September 11th, 2001, our country was attacked by terrorists, and thousands of innocent people lost their lives, and later many lost their lives in retaliation in war. There were many memorial gatherings across the country this day, on Friday, where the dead were honored, where prayers were offered and victims were named. What we probably didn't hear, the one word that was probably not spoken in any of those speeches and tributes, probably was the word forgiveness. Should we forgive the Al-Qaeda terrorists? There's only one voice that tells us that we are to forgive, and that is the voice of Jesus. Jesus' answer goes way beyond what Peter was expecting. Peter was expecting, 7 times, I can probably deal with that. But Jesus said, no, we must forgive 77 times. In gospel language, in Bible language, it means all the time. Every time we must forgive. In biblical math, Jesus is trying to tell us that we must be ready to forgive all the time. Talk about a high standard, and especially if we apply that standard to what happened in 9/11. If we are going to follow this commandment of Jesus to forgive, I think we have to be clear on what forgiveness is not. What forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not being naive. When you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you can go on now and easily trust them if they've offended you. Al-Qaeda hurt us in the past and is very capable of hurting us again. So it makes perfect sense to take steps to prevent another attack. We have a right and a duty to protect ourselves. There can be no interior torture that is self-imposed when we fail to forgive. When we fail to forgive, there is a torture going on. We're always thinking of that evil that happened to us, and we're just letting it just rip at us and keep going after us. Holding on to hate and to revenge, we will live really a life of torment. We will never recover, I think, from any kind of terrible experience in our life until we're ready to forgive. We must be clear about forgiveness and what it is not. Again, it does not mean that everything will go away and be fine once you say the magic words, I forgive you. That doesn't happen. We wish it would. It is not about making excuses for another to justify bad and hurtful behavior towards us. It is especially not putting yourself back in a situation where you can be hurt again. Sometimes when bad things have happened to us or terrible things have been done to us, the best policy is to break off contact completely with that person who has hurt us so that they don't continue to hurt us, yet always opening the door for possible healing. Forgiveness does not require anyone to tolerate someone's sin. Care must be taken that codependents do not use forgiveness to justify living with dysfunctional or harmful behavior. Christianity does not teach us that a person should never suffer the consequences of their bad behavior. When Jesus says to turn the other cheek, he does not tell us to tolerate sinful, harmful, or dysfunctional behavior. Forgiveness is a process. Forgiveness takes time. Forgiveness is honest. It knows that maybe what has happened to us was awful, was wrong, was a terrible thing. But if we allow it to continue to just go crazy inside of us, our anger about it will never be healed. Will never be healed. Being Christian is not for the faint-hearted. Forgiveness does not come easily. It is hard for the human heart to forgive, especially when we've been hurt by someone that we might love. Forgiveness does not show weakness, but rather forgiveness shows true strength and power. It enables us to stop reacting and rather to take control of ourselves. In fact, forgiveness does more good for us than for the one we forgive, because it sets us free. And what's often happens is we're all irritated and just mad at this person for just remembering everything that happened, and that person doesn't even know it. You just walk around and here's you're all agitated and upset and ripped apart, and they could care less. How can we begin then to forgive another? The Lord says, pray for those who persecute you. Prayer transforms us from being a victim into becoming an intercessor, that we do something positive. Instead of being the victim, we're now the one in control. We're praying for that individual to have their life changed. We can start to see people who have done us wrong, perhaps in a new light, as individuals themselves in need of great healing. To start the process of forgiveness, praying for the other is always a good place to start. A second step is perhaps to pray for ourselves. Christ's sacrifice on the cross is a source of great and a huge river of forgiveness. At each Mass, we can ask the Lord to irrigate the hard desert of our soul with his waters of forgiveness, to enable us to forgive and to be truly set free. A third step is to look to the future, not dwell in the past. We all have hurts from the past, painful ones. We all have traumas that we have endured. Forgiveness comes as we look forward to what can be in our life, and not necessarily always what was, that we can look for a better place. We should forgive, we need to forgive, and we can forgive, because forgiveness releases our soul from that spiritual paralysis and makes room for God's grace and his will in our lives. Forgiveness is what we could call the spiritual surgery that brings true healing to our lives.